South Alabama hosting Southern Miss, headlining the second to last weekend of Sun Belt play. It's Locked On Sun Belt.
You are Locked On Sun Belt, your daily podcast on the Sun Belt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Sun Belt, your team every day. I'm your host, Dave Schultz. Huge matchups this weekend in the Sun Belt, especially on Thursday night. We're not short of really good matchups. Let's start out with Southern Miss coming into Mobile to take on South Alabama. South Alabama has never lost to Southern Miss in Mobile, and oddly enough, despite the Golden Eagles being 23-4, 12-2 in the conference, and South Alabama being 13-14, 6-8 in the conference, Southern Miss is a total of a 1-point favorite. That's it. So when I repeatedly say it's tough to win on the road, that's the indication. Now we go back a little bit. First of all, these two teams are really hot. Southern Miss has won 9 in a row, and South Alabama has lost 5 of 6. And the one they didn't win, they should have won. They blew it basically to Troy a week ago. So big matchup. This one it's a whiteout for South Alabama. They kind of got a little bit late in that, but that's what they're doing. So we'll see if we can get a good crowd in that. Plus, we may get some folks from Hattiesburg, although there is some weather that is expected. So we'll see. It is only a 90-minute drive. It is not that long to make the round trip, even if it is a little bit late at night. Obviously, you want to avoid driving in bad weather if that's the case. All right, so go back to the first matchup. South Alabama barely lost to Southern Miss. It was in the middle of a 4-game losing streak, but they had played the Cajuns and probably could have won that ball game. They played Southern Miss, probably could have won that ball game. They certainly could have beaten Coastal Carolina. They had the last shot in that ball game, and they could have beaten Old Dominion, although they played really poorly in that game. They actually had the lead at half, 37-33, but they lost to Southern Miss 76-72. It was a tit for tat between the Jaguars' Isaiah Moore and Southern Miss's Austin Crowley. Crowley, 25 points on 8 of 18 shooting, but only 1 of 8 from 3. Isaiah Moore doesn't shoot from 3. He was 0 for 1, but 8 of 15 from the floor. He had 22 points. Chipping in Kevin Samuel, the walking double-double, 15 points, 11 rebounds. And Greg Parham, still struggling from 3 in that ballgame, 1 of 6, but he had 11 points. On the Southern Miss side, you had Crowley's 25, Hassey had 18, Pinckney had 18, and Deontay Harris had 11. That was Alvarez's first game back from injury. He was a little bit out of control, a little bit too fast for himself. In 11 minutes, he was 0 for 3. He had a rebound, an assist, a block, and a turnover. So he was just getting back in the flow of things. He is big against Louisiana last week. He came off of the bench, and when Crowley had foul trouble, he actually saved Southern Miss. They were down 10, and he helped cut the lead to 5. He had 14 first-half points, started the second half, only scored 3 points in the second half because Crowley picked it up. But he was big in the Louisiana game, wasn't all that big in the South Alabama game. So you got a huge matchup. It is Southern Miss. It is South Alabama. I can't imagine it's a trap game. Kind of tough to have a trap game, when you play twice a week, right? Sometimes maybe you play on a Saturday, and then some teams play on Monday, and then they play on Saturday again. So maybe somewhere in there, or you play on a Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, or something. Kind of tough. Now, Southern Miss, it should be noted, they have the opposite of the Cajuns. And again, we're not at the point where I'm trying to figure out the tiebreaker if these two teams tie. So again, my head hurts when that happens. I'm not going to worry about that because there is a 2-game difference, and it is a 2-game difference because, well, the Cajuns have lost 2 in a row, including 1 to Southern Miss. And so they each have 1 win in the season series. So it won't, if Louisiana had won that ball game, Well, they still may be one game behind because they lost to Troy, but they would win the tiebreaker. So that's not the case. So Louisiana, though, is playing 3 out of their 4 games at home to wrap up the season. Not so much for Southern Miss. It is not the easiest of all schedules for Southern Miss. They are the best team in the conference, but they have to go to South Alabama. They get Georgia Southern at home. That's not going to be a cakewalk. Then they have to travel to Old Dominion, and then they have to travel to Texas State. That's basically to the 2, furthest teams east and the furthest team west. Maybe Coastal's a little further east, but they are spanning the width of the conference, and that travel is not necessarily going to be easy, especially when you're going all the way from Hattiesburg to Norfolk and then to San Marcos. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that Southern Miss loses a couple of ball games. I don't think it's going to happen. They are barely favored against South Alabama. They'll certainly be favored against Georgia Southern. Most likely will be favored against Old Dominion and Texas State. I guess that all depends on what happens on Thursday. We'll see what South Alabama can do in this ball game. It was a big deal following the game. Richie Riley said we made too many mistakes. Southern Miss scored too many points in the paint. And a big deal was the free throws. South Alabama only hit 13 of 19, whereas Southern Miss hit 19 of 21. So that's 6-point differential when it's a 4-point game, according to Richie Riley. Obviously, a big difference. The problem was you had your guards missing. So Kevin Samuel, by the way, hit his first free throw this past Monday against Hartford for the first time since January 19th. He was 1 of 3 in that ball game, which is that the 19th? Was that the 19th? That was the 19th against Southern Miss. So he hadn't hit a free throw since. Doesn't shoot a lot, but he shoots enough to where it makes a difference. Turbo Jones was 1 of 2. Isaiah Moore, 6 of 8. And Judah Brown, 1 of 2. So what happens if Turbo hits his 2 free throws? Because he's like the best free throw shooter, I think, in the conference. Isaiah Moore hits his 2 free throws. You hit them all. That's kind of tough to do. So even if you hit 3 more of those 6 missed free throws, that's half. You're still 1 point short. So it will be interesting. Again, you're certainly going to get South Alabama's best. And I would think that Southern Miss wants to come into Mobile and get a win. They have not had a win in Mobile ever. So, and they lead the series 27 to 20, and they got embarrassed last year here. This game was not close at all. Obviously out of conference, but it was a blowout, I thought, 85-55. Not close. 45-24 at half. South Alabama is very different. Turbo Jones, let's see if anybody played from, I'm not even sure if Turbo Jones was playing in that one. Let's see here. No, Turbo didn't even play. So it's a very different ball team for both squads. Although you do have DeAndre Pinckney and Mo Arnold for Southern Miss. But, I mean, 2 very different squads from last year. But South Alabama did take down Southern Miss 85-55. Should be a great ball game. And hopefully there will be a big crowd in the Mitchell Center for Southern Miss and South Alabama. All right, coming up, there are many more matchups for seeding, including one that has the potential for a double bye in the Sun Belt Conference Tournament. We will do that next, but let me tell you about FanDuel. The midway point of the NBA season is here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores and threes drained. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at bigger payout with the same game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, back to Locked On Sunbelt. I'm your host, Dave Schultz. We talked about Southern Miss coming into South Alabama. Much bigger, well, I'd say it's a much bigger ball game for South Alabama because they're looking to avoid the last four, but Southern Miss is looking to win a regular season title. So there's not the whole, it's bigger for one than the other per se, although it would appear that Southern Miss has a top four seed wrapped up. However, though, we do have another one. We got James Madison taking on Old Dominion, and that has serious ramifications. Right now, James Madison is fourth in the conference, 9-5, and Old Dominion is 8-6. The top four seeds get a first-round bye. I'm sorry, the top four seeds get a double bye. So the tournament starts on a Tuesday. It's an off day on Wednesday. Game on Thursday, and then the top four seeds don't play until Saturday. That's the difference between fourth and fifth in the Sun Belt Conference tournament. And earlier this year, James Madison has already beaten Old Dominion in Norfolk 78-73. Both these teams are hot. I think they've both won 5 out of their last 6 ball games. Old Dominion did beat South Alabama. I'm not sure if Old Dominion played all that well in that ball game, but certainly South did not. But it was the Monarchs coming away with a victory. And they're just one game behind James Madison. However, as I mentioned, James Madison's already beaten Old Dominion. So if James Madison win, and that'd be like 2.5 games up on Old Dominion. Old Dominion wins this one, then we're going to have to get into those tiebreaker deals and how we're going to figure that out. So they would be tied. Not only the same record, they would both be 9-6, and they would have split the season series. So that's a huge matchup on a Thursday night. It is in Harrisonburg, as James Madison, they are second in the conference in scoring, just behind Marshall, and that is a huge, huge matchup for both the Dukes and the Monarchs. All right, elsewhere in the Sun Belt on Thursday, you do have App State and Texas State. Texas State trying to catch South Alabama. This ball game is in Lovely Boone, North Carolina. Texas State trying to avoid the bottom 4 because they would have to play on a Tuesday in the Sun Belt Conference tournament. App State is right in the middle of the pack. They are 7-7, so technically they are 4, 5, 6 tied for 7th. Right there with Georgia Southern and Monroe. And, again, a chance, South Alabama wins, App State loses. And then so all of a sudden, South Alabama, again, they lost App State earlier in the year. But, you're getting closer to all of these 5 and 10s. I'm not sure there's a big difference right now, in the 5 and 10 spots. Not a huge difference. Not really going to matter. You're going to get one of those 5 to 10 teams, and then you're going to get a top seed after that. So you may get one of the bottom seeds. I guess the higher you ranked, 5 and 6 get the winners of the Tuesday matchups on Thursday. Another big matchup. Marshall is hosting Georgia Southern. Georgia Southern is coming in relatively well. They have turned things around a little bit. They got a big win over James Madison and Arkansas State. They had lost 4 in a row, so they've maybe turned their season around. And, Marshall kind of on the outside looking in at this standings. I guess they're tied with the Cajuns, but the Cajuns are technically ahead of them because the Cajuns beat Marshall. So Marshall technically still has an outside shot at the conference championship slightly. Let's see what their schedule is moving forward. They get Georgia Southern and Troy at home, and then they're at James Madison and at Old Dominion. So not the easiest schedule either, but they don't play the Cajuns or Southern Miss again, and they've beaten Southern Miss, but they've lost to the Cajuns. And I think they've only played them each one time. So they get the tiebreaker with Southern Miss. They would not get the tiebreaker with the Cajuns. So technically they're in third place, but I guess they have an outside shot as well. If the Cajuns have an outside shot, then certainly Marshall has an outside shot as well for the conference championship. All right, let's take another time out. We'll continue to preview the Sun Belt Conference on Thursday. On a side note, did I see this right? Southern Miss baseball, home baseball, is sold out for the year. Wow. How about that? The Cajuns don't even do that. Southern Miss baseball is sold out for the season at home. We're not talking, season tickets. We're talking all tickets. And they said on a game-by-game basis, they will make single-game tickets available based on, I don't know, what they decide to do. But Southern Miss announced that baseball is sold out at home. I mean, who doesn't do that? LSU doesn't do that. You can go, maybe not day a game, but you can go up and get an LSU ticket. That's really impressive. I know the box is much bigger than where Southern Miss plays, but nonetheless, very impressive for Southern Miss's home games to be baseball games to be all sold out. So kind of taking the momentum from last year and then basketball and now moving it into baseball as well. All right. Thanks again for subscribing. Please subscribe on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. I don't know, we're doing a little bit better job getting the word out, but it seems that more are listening or at least commenting either on Twitter or on the actual YouTube video. So more people are checking us out, and we do appreciate it. All right, elsewhere in the Sun Belt on Thursday, you do have Coastal Carolina and Georgia State, and that is, well, a nothing burger. They're both going to be in the bottom four seeds. Georgia State is 3-11, and Coastal Carolina is 4-10. I guess technically, if Coastal Carolina wins the rest of the ball games, I guess they could, somehow get to the 10th spot, but that means South Alabama would have to lose all of theirs. The Cajuns trying to snap out of it. They have Monroe. This is a big ball game for South Alabama. The Cajuns have lost 2 in a row. We said the Southern Miss and then Troy. And also Louisiana wants to still have a shot at the regular season title. Monroe has lost, was it 2 in a row or 3 in a row? Yeah, they've lost 3 in a row to South Alabama, App State, and Southern Miss. So this is a big ball game here. And a couple of these are big ball games because, if somehow South Alabama wins this ball game against Southern Miss, they'll be 7-8. Georgia Southern loses to Marshall, they'll be 7-8. And Monroe loses to Louisiana, they'll be 7-8. And all of a sudden, South Alabama could start moving up the standings. All right, Troy, I guess this could be listed as a trap game because they get Arkansas State. They're going to Jonesboro. This would be the definition of a trap game. So Troy, who all of a sudden have won 3 in a row after losing 3 in a row, beating Texas State, escaping with a victory late against South Alabama, and then taking down the Cajuns, just dominating the second half. They get Arkansas State in Jonesboro tonight. But then on Saturday, they're at Marshall. So this is the definition of a trap game because they're going to be looking forward to taking on Marshall. And that's one of those things where maybe, they can measure up to Marshall, see how they measure up to Marshall, and then they may get them in the Sun Belt Conference tournament, depending on how it turns out. They also wrap up at ULM and Coastal Carolina. So 3 of 4 games are on the road. Not the easiest, and they're going back and forth as well. So Troy to Jonesboro, and then to Huntington, and then to Monroe, and then to Conway, South Carolina. So they are crisscrossing the Sun Belt over the last 4 games. But we're looking forward to it. Big ball games on a Thursday night in the Sun Belt. We will. I will be there. How about that one? I will be at the South Alabama Southern Miss ball game. Looking forward to seeing Austin Crowley in person, as we've only been able to watch him on TV thus far. Okay, I am your host, Dave Schultz. Thank you so much for tuning in. You've been watching and listening to Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day.